Pundit is the football trivia game. Every sale using the code LIONS at checkout now gives a whopping 40% discount plus a £10 donation to the Lions Food Hub. Visit punditgames.co.uk to order your copy. punditgames.co.uk, code LIONS.
You're listening to Achtung, Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello dear listeners, welcome to another Friday morning show, something for the weekend, sir. Joining me on our regular weekly look at the news and events of the Millwall week is my regular co-host, it's Mr. Neil Fissler. Welcome to the show, Neil.
Hello, Nick. Hello, everybody. Not a bad week, really, is it? Well, we've had worse weeks down at Millwall, haven't we?
I would go as far to say, I mean, there's still 14 games to go, Neil, so we've got to put that caveat into our conversation. 14 games to go, dear listeners. Still plenty of time for the wheels to come off the tracks, but I think this week was a bit of a momentous week in our season because we really sent a bit of a message to the division, to other teams around us, that we are serious contenders. That's not to say how it's all going to finish and pan out, but I mean, to take 4 points from the two best sides in the division, and Burnley, I think, the best team by some distance in the division, leave aside the play acting and all the rest of that, we'll talk about that. But I think to take 4 points from those two fixtures has sent a bit of a message around the league, mate, don't you think? We're serious, you know.
Yeah. Any chance that we were going to fly under the radar has now gone. We are serious playoff contenders. There's still got a nagging bit of reality in the back of my mind that we could fall short. But that's just based on
Millwall history.
The absolute horrendous injury list that we seem to be picking up, and I know we're going to come on to that, and the fact that this is Millwall, really, isn't it? So
it's Millwall. Oh dear, yeah.
I'm not part of this online community that feel that we've got some God-given right to finish in the playoffs. We've got to work for this. We've put ourselves in a brilliant position, and now we've got to go and finish off the job.
You're right. I mean, tomorrow's fixture at Stoke is no easy task going to Stoke, is it? Never. And they're not doing terribly well this season. They sit in 17th position on 40 points. The Lions 5th. But part of a pack. I mean, we're part of a pack. You're dead right. I mean, there's a lot of work still to be done. That's part of the challenge for the season. I was interested to look at some comments by Gary Rowett on what I think is London News Online. He's talking about that the playoff target says anything between 72 and 74 points means you'd usually be very unfortunate not to get in the top six. So I think he's right. So you're talking about another 8, maybe 9 wins from the season to put us in the kind of area we'd expect to be a playoff participant at the end of the season. Now, although I think Richard Corley says that we've got an easier running than some of our contenders on these final 14 fixtures, you're right. The squad. I mean, at times against Burnley, I thought we were on a little bit of a wing and a prayer there, Neil. We rode our luck as much as the spirit that got us back into that game. I think squad size might be our Achilles heel, if anything is going to be an Achilles heel this season.
We've done fantastically well, considering that I think we're all critical of not signing a striker come the end of the transfer. Tom Bradshaw has made a bit of a mockery of that idea, really, isn't he? And, with that notion.
Yeah.
He's been absolutely fire. The team's been on fire the last couple of games. It's just so frustrating that there are games like Coventry a couple of weeks ago where we were so poor.
Yes.
We let a chance slip through our fingers. But hey, yeah, let's just say we're in fifth place, I think, isn't it? And
yeah.
yeah, it's up to us now. Yeah, if we continue on the same form we've been doing, we're going to finish in the playoffs, and then it's anybody's guess what happens from there, isn't it?
Yeah, playoffs are a lottery, aren't they? I mean, there's 3 points listeners cover. Blackburn in fourth position, including us, Luton, Watford, Sunderland, Norwich on 49. There's a bit of a game in hand for West Brom on 45. Then, but so let's say there's about 6 or 7 clubs that might be thinking realistically of that same playoff spot that we're looking for. I mean, to be contenders is a huge achievement. We've said it a few times on this show, Neil. The achievement, presuming that's where we do finish or we get very, very close to it, I think it's a massive achievement by Gary Rowett and the club. Because when you look at these other names, Middlesbrough, Blackburn, Watford, Sunderland, Norwich, West Brom, all in their different ways commanding much bigger resources than we can bring to bear. Only Luton can really, put themselves on a par with us, resource-wise. So I think, it's been a huge season and some very, very, very big fixtures yet to come. But we've got to go to Stoke tomorrow, so let's not count chickens before before they hatch.
Horrible place, absolutely awful. February.
Yeah, do you know what? I was trying to think. I can't remember going to Stoke. Not this version of it. I went to the old ground, Victoria Ground. That was donkeys years ago, of course. I don't think I've ever. For some reason, I've never been there. It's one of those grounds where I sometimes had the idea I'll go to that fixture, and it never worked out for one reason or another. So and tomorrow I'm not going to be able to go either. Apparently it's high on a hill, isn't it? I've never been to it, so I'm speaking what I've read. Set on a high piece of ground with a wind whipping around it.
Yeah, I covered a game there. Actually, I've covered Millwall there. I think
Have you?
when I was on the Daily Star Sunday, Millwall went up there under in the halcyon days of Tony Burns and David Tuttle.
You picked a season there. Wow.
They picked a season, I think, to send me. I think they were trying to punish me for something or other. I remember just the wind was howling around, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant place to go. I see no reason why tomorrow will be particularly pleasant unless we come away with 3 points. It's one of those. Yeah, the Victoria Ground was a proper old football ground.
Yeah, this is one of your modern, all kind of all-encompassing, all seated, nondescript stadiums, isn't it? The 365 stadium.
Industrial estate, from what I can remember, or in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
I think you pass it into Stoke on the train, but there's nothing particularly appealing about Stoke apart from the railway platform back to London.
I like that. And we go from one extreme, from Stoke to Luton again. Another big game. They're coming thick and fast, listeners, at the moment. Luton away on Tuesday. That's on television, I think. I believe we've sold out of our away. Following on Tuesday. I think you can still. By the time you get to hear this, you won't be able to get tickets for Stoke, but I think there's still a few available for the trip up to the mid. Is it the Midlands? It's kind of Northern Midlands. Potteries, isn't it? So yeah, two big fixtures, 6 big points at stake. Just looking at this story on London News, talking about Tom Bradshaw. We've already said he's on fire. Richard Cawley describes him as a perfect team player. Also talking about being in Welsh international contention. If he carries on scoring goals like he is at the moment, Neil, I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't be on the radar of the Welsh national side. I like Tom Bradshaw. He's getting the service. We've said this before. We're going to say it again, listeners. He's getting the service at last that gives him a fighting chance of putting the ball in the net. Whereas previously, I think we were just using slightly incorrectly as a target man. That's not really his role. But he certainly looked a player transformed these past few games. And when he came on Tuesday, of course, he got the vital equaliser, which turned around what would have been a difficult evening otherwise. I really like him. He's certainly in form at the moment, isn't he?
I think it was a very smart move by Gary Rowett to leave him on the bench. I know I know they're saying something about he picked up a hamstring strain, didn't he?
Yeah.
And at the certainly the Burnley people couldn't understand. Well, your Burnley fans, if you look at their forum, somebody posted a link on Hoff, and you have a quick read of it, don't you?
Yeah.
And they couldn't understand why Bradshaw started on the bench. But we can't afford to lose him.
No, we
cannot afford to bring
no.
go ping. What's he got now? Is he a leading scorer? What's he got? 11?
He's 11.
12
I was
goals?
just looking at the chart there. Tom Bradshaw, number 1 goal scorer, 11 goals. Zian Fleming, number 2 on 10. And then we're down to Charlie Cresswell on 4 goals. No, I think you're right. I mean, we've said it before. We'll say it again, listeners. I keep saying that. Vogelsummer is a great player in his way. I don't think he quite worked as the lone striker the other night. I think he's probably a player that likes a partner up front, which he's not going to get in this formation. But when he did go more as I don't know about a winger, but more on the kind of on the edge of the midfield, he's a great crosser of the ball, and I think it's horses for courses at the moment. Neil. That's where he's going to be best employed. So we do have to put Tom Bradshaw as our really lone striker in cotton wool at the end of each game, don't we? He's got to be nursed through these fixtures because we were a little bit done for without him.
Yeah, I'm just having a look now at his career stats, and I think his best return's about 20 for Walsall. This is undoubtedly his best return for Millwall.
Yeah.
He got 9 last season. So we cannot underestimate what we need from him in these.
He's got to take it easy with him. He's got to be preserved. And it may be some difficult substitution for some online to accept because he's got to be nursed. I mean, Burnley was a good example. I think to some extent, I don't think Gary Rowett had written it off as the proverbial free hit that we kept reading about online, but I do think he had a plan to get through a game that was always going to be a difficult one for us. By keeping Bradshaw on the bench, it enabled him to at least get some measure of recovery on an injury on his leg, because he's almost certainly going to have to start Stoke, and we'll see about Luton when we go up there. So he's going to get some physical punishment over the next few games. So we do need to be very careful with Burnley. Neil, I touched on this the other day when we did the post Burnley show. I mean, a very, very attractive side to watch, but I thought they also displayed what I call the very worst of modern football, the play acting once the Mill started to claw their way back into the game. That was a very unattractive side of modern football, and if we ever do get into the Premier League, it's a side of the game that we're going to have to probably get used to seeing. But I find it very, I don't like it at all. I mean, they embarrassed themselves, I thought, on Tuesday.
That's Scott Twine. I'm not going to choose my words carefully. He tried to fucking cheat. Yeah. Let's be honest. He was an embarrassment to himself, his family, his profession, his ancestors, and anybody else connected.
No. You're right. It was cheating. It's in plain view.
To roll around 4 times or whatever he did. Okay, it was a very strong tackle, and he landed. But then to roll around almost as if to try and get Danny Mack sent off.
Yeah, Brooked or whatever was going to come his way, yeah. No, I agree.
Really, really, really embarrassing. And there was another situation where a player fell off the pitch, and then Ashley Barnes lifted him up and dropped him back on the pitch. To my mind, Barnes should have been cautioned.
Yeah, yellow, yeah.
For unsportsmanlike conduct. Yeah, they book you for taking your shirt off. But what he did was he put an injured player back on the pitch to try and gain some sportsmanship advantage. That's shithousery of the highest order, and it's something that rugby fans call football Wendy ball. I hate the expression.
Yeah.
you can see why when you get Twine, the subject of a strong tackle, he had a bit of treatment on some non-injury, and then 10 seconds later he was up running around as if nothing had happened. And the way that he went down, you'd have thought he'd suffered a career-ending injury, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
It was just absolutely embarrassing. And if that's what the Premier League's going to be, they can fuck off. I don't want it because it will cause disorder.
Well, I was thinking about it afterwards. Yeah, I mean, I second everything you just said, because at Millwall we're many things, and we've been lambasted over the years for things that may or may not have happened. But one thing I believe, and I might be over romanticising us, listeners, you tell me, but I believe we're an honest club in the sense of how we want our football to be played. I would seriously hate to watch a Millwall player conducting himself in that way, even if we were winning, even whatever the situation. I would not want to see that, because it'd be like the speech at the start of the Brian Clough film. You've cheated your way through it, and that's not what I would want for a club that I value, Millwall Football Club. What struck me as well is that I was thinking about the tactics and the kind of that method of I won't say play the game, but that method of cheating, let's call it what it is. You're right, Neil. That comes from the top. That comes from Vincent Kompany. He sets the tone for that football club. They played some beautiful football that probably we may not be able to achieve. But that cheating also comes from if we're going to laud him for being an ex-Manchester City participant in the European game and all the things that we're supposed to admire so much in the modern world, then you've also got to pin that on him as well, because he could end that with one command. He's the manager. Players that do that don't get picked for my team. That would be, I can almost hear someone like Brian Clough saying that, can't you? That comes from Vincent Kompany, who is, he's one of the Sky TV great figures of the game, and that's that. There's something deeply immoral about that, because if your team is prepared to cheat in that way, then you don't deserve those accolades. I think you have to see these people for what they are. Yeah, they may win the match, they may win the league, probably will, looking at the league table, but it's not a way of winning that I would want personally. I don't believe we would want it as a club. Do you? Am I over romanticising? Do you think?
No, I don't think you are. They deserve to win the league. They are the best team in the league. Let's be quite frank about it.
On football terms, yeah.
But there seems to be something about cheating being ingrained, because Manchester City have, 150 charges of financial cheating.
Yeah.
So is there something ingrained there? It's just a sad thing that you don't want to. You don't want to see it, because the next thing you know is some kid's seen it, and
well, they all do it, don't they?
Sunday morning,
yeah,
some kid will go flying in for a tackle, and the player that he tackles will think that it's then therefore acceptable to roll around on the floor 4 times. Yeah, well, I thought that we got out of this with Italian football 20, 30, 40 years ago when they were doing this kind of thing. But, oh, mate, it's just it just boils my blood. And one thing about Millwall is we are actually true to ourselves. We stand up for what we believe in.
Absolutely. Sometimes to some cost. In truth, there's a price to pay for that kind of approach to life. I think. I think there's always an element in professional sport. I think look across other sports as well. There's always an element of if your livelihood depends on a result, then people push the rules and push the unspoken rules, whatever they may or may not be in the respective sports, and they try and push them to the limits. But there is a line to be crossed, and I think trying to feign injury. I mean, also if you're going to do it, if Scott Twine listens to the show, I doubt it. But if you're going to do it, Scott, at least do it well. Don't come up with it was pantomime villain stuff, wasn't it? It was poorly done. If you're going to cheat, at least try and show some skill at it. I don't know.
What I would love to see would have been a proper hard man like Hurlock or Harry Crick or
Muscat. Can you imagine Muscat? He would have given him something to roll around about.
Alex Ray, somebody like that, who have actually fucking stood on him and given him something to roll around about. To be quite honest, that would have been a thing of
Oh
beauty.
dear. Let's move along to better subjects. I just wanted to get. I've been thinking about that since the 1-1 draw. It's a magnificent result, but and they're a magnificent team, Burnley. But I must admit, it would leave a very sour taste in my mouth if I were a Burnley fan. What a strange bunch they are, Neil. I don't know if you've seen any of the YouTube footage and on Twitter. They're singing "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles" at Millwall, and why do teams do that? It doesn't anger anyone at all, and you just make yourself look like a complete prick. But the teams seem to think that's going to really put one over on us. It's very strange behaviour. Also, not wearing shirts. Tell me about that. Why do they not wear a shirt on a cold night? I don't get that either.
One thing that is, isn't it? But no, it was exactly as if I can remember Hearts turning up for Neil Harris's testimonial, and they all walked in singing "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles." What? It just makes you look like a retard, really, doesn't it? Let's be honest. You just look. You just look like what you are. I know.
Very, very stupid. That's what you are. But anyway, there we are. They're not the only ones to have done it, and the most recent ones to have done it. And it always makes me laugh when people do that.
Yeah, then they film themselves for social media as if it's some kind of kudos for posting this on TikTok or something. And you just think, why?
I don't know. Some things are beyond me. I don't get that. There's some things in the modern world, listeners, that have just started. We had this conversation the other day when it was out. Something at a certain point, generationally, the world leaves you behind slightly. I think I might be at that point, Neil. I think maybe past it some time ago. I don't know. I'm just reading through a few of the lead stories here from London News. Gary Rowett is now in the top 10 longest-serving managers in the Football League, strangely. It's 3 years since he joined us in October 2019. That's after QPR appointed Gareth Ainsworth, so that's moved... I suppose that's moved Ainsworth out of the Wycombe Wanderers slot, so that means Gary Rowett moves into the top 10. It's quite an achievement. He's had plenty. Each season's not gone by without someone calling for his sacking at some point, Neil. So he's certainly surfed the Millwall wave, hasn't he? And still in position, and now looking a contender, if not a done deal, contender for playoff football. That would be some achievement for him if he gets us into that slot, I think.
Well, considering that I think I've done it, H is called a temporary truce, probably. Until the games,
we lose 2 in a row.
But then he'll be back on the. Well, I'm going to pay for the petrol to drive him up to West Brom or wherever. Can you actually name the other 10? I tried this earlier on.
Off the top of my head, there'll be lower league managers, won't I can't. And
he's
someone. Is there a guy at Stevenage who's managed there forever? Is there?
No. There's only one in the Championship above him.
Is there?
Which is Mark Robbins. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Mark Robbins, yes, he's been around a long time.
Yeah, we won't get them. There's them out from the top. You might get 2 of them. But you've got...
You're very generous to me saying that. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Right. Yeah, well, the top 10 are Simon Weaver of Harrogate, appointed in May 2009. John Coleman of Stanley.
Right.
September 2014.
Right.
The next 2 you surely get 3 and 4. Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool, October 2000.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Pep Guardiola, who to my mind ruined English football by encouraging goalkeepers to play out from the back with disastrous consequences. Then you've got Mark Robbins, Coventry, March 2017.
Right.
Carl Robbins, Oxford United.
Right.
March 2018.
Wow.
Then you've got Sky's favourite Premiership or Premier League manager.
Yep.
The man they have love in with every other week, Thomas Frank, Brentford, October
Yes, he's been knocking
2018.
around a while now. That's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Brendan Rodgers, which was one I didn't get,
Leicester City.
actually.
Right. Okay.
Yep. February 2019. Then you've got Matt Gray at Sutton United, May 2019. So that was just after they got elected or they won promotion into the Football League. I think their previous manager was there about 100 years, but I think was a school teacher, so didn't want to go full time. And then you've got All Hail King Gary.
King Gary. Well done, Gary. That's quite an achievement. But nothing compared. Fred Everis of West Bromwich Albion, Neil, who can top King Gary's 10th position with 3 years by a whopping 45 years, 9 months and 30 days. He managed West Brom from August 1902 until the 31st of May 1948. Fred Everis. He's the longest managerial reign on Wikipedia. So that's quite a reign, isn't it? 45 years. Bob Hunter would be not far short of it. I mean, in Millwall terms, he was in place quite a long time.
Yeah, but
back in the old era.
But I think a lot of Bob Hunter's was spent as coach.
A trainer, wasn't he? He was a trainer.
As trainer, so I think his football, I think his management career, he probably would be our longest serving manager. Well, we will actually look into this and we will do we might do a history show as people have been requesting them. Long gone are the days of 5 or 10 years ago when you couldn't break into the top 4 or 5 because you had Arsene Wenger there. You had, obviously, for many years, you had Dario Gradi, who was there.
Best not talk about him anymore.
He was at Crewe for a long time. Then you had somebody that managed in a club and dropped out the league, and then they'd come back in again. And so
I think the role of manager, the actual role of the job has changed. I mean, I'm joking here with Fred Everis. There's loads. It seemed to be the fashion. The modern world obviously changes management in, very, very swiftly. But you look at all these loads of names here. Fred Everis is the lead one, 45 years. There's 4 guys here with 40 years, 35 years, and so on. So I think the role of manager back then was less... it was football related, but you were kind of managing as well the club overall, and I don't think it was just the football side of it. You were the manager
role, wasn't it? You actually, you actually ran the whole of the football club. In many respects, like Ferguson did with Manchester United, but on steroids. You actually ran the club, and you reported directly to the board of directors. But even in many cases, the board of directors were scared of the manager. The real authoritarian figures, weren't they? The likes of Herbert Chapman and that.
Ruled with a rod of iron. That's right. I mean, I suppose the nearest we've had to that, I'm just looking at the post-1946 list here, listeners. We've gone off onto a tangent here, but I'm going to stick with it because I like this tangent. You got the likes of Sir Alex Ferguson, managed for 26 years at Manchester United from 1986 till 2013. He's probably the closest to that kind of, I don't want to say a tyrannical figure, but certainly an overpowering personality manager. Arsene Wenger will be something close to it. But that kind of figure seems to have gone from the game, Neil. It's much more transient now, isn't it, management?
Yeah, he's probably not changed for the better. But there's so much involved now. Some managers... a lot of managers, especially in the Premier League, they don't even do the recruitment. The recruitment's done for them.
No, done for them. That's right.
More like head coaches, aren't they? A bit like American football, I guess, where I don't think the coach has an awful lot of say in the players that are signed. He is given a say, but there's a recruitment team, isn't there? And things.
Yeah, you just produce the results on the pitch with the players that you're given, pretty much.
Some managers in the Premier League, I don't know how much say Pep Guardiola has. He probably just gives a list of players that he wants them to sign and work your way through that, lads. Whereas I think Rowett is probably a lot more hands-on. I would say he says to Alex Aldridge, "I want this player. Go out and sign him."
Go and find me one. Yeah.
And
Um,
then maybe in the likes of Fleming, Alex will go back and say, "Look, I found this player. I think it'd be really good for you." Or an agent put him up, and it'd be quite interesting to see how to get that kind of thing from the club, how the Fleming and Vogelslammer transfers actually came about, because it's not something.
there's an idea for Wall Talk. There's an idea for Wall Talk podcast, a little bit of an in-depth show on how scouting in the and how signings take place in the modern game. Whether they can reveal, I don't know. All clubs must follow the same pattern. So, but anyway, it'd be an interesting show to find out a little bit more about it.
Achtung, Millwall.
Neil, we've had a big any article that is headlined an extensive update from Millwall CEO is really going to be luring you in to read it, but it's quite a dense piece on the official club website. But it's a long piece from Steve Kavanagh. It's quite an interesting article if you read through it. It's quite a lot to get through, listeners. We're going to try and have a go at wading through it, Neil, aren't we? Various aspects to it. Mostly, it relates to the government white paper, the update of football, wasn't it? The Tracy Crouch report that was published this week by the government.
Yeah, but this confuses me, this white paper, because one minute they're bringing it out, the next minute they're not bringing it out. Then all of a sudden, is it going to be watered down? No, it's not going to be watered down. Yes, it is going to be watered down. And then all of a sudden, they're bringing it out and it's going to be enshrined into law. I think a lot of it is pie in the sky thinking, and it remains to be seen.
I suppose the main part about it is, I mean, it enshrines the major parts of the Tracy Crouch report into football. I suppose if you're going to pick out the main bones of that, it's basically to impose a football regulator paid for by the Premier League, which is a laugh because they've campaigned actively not to have a regulation in their industry, but now they're going to have to pay for a regulator. David Sullivan of the West Ham, the porno magnate, speaking vehemently against it on Sky TV yesterday. And I always think if David Sullivan's against something, there's a pretty good marker that you want to be in favour of it. But yeah, so they're going to have a regulator. They're going to have some form of wage-related discipline imposed on the amounts you can spend on wages related to your income, enforceable by the football regulator. It seems to be the major elements of the Tracy Crouch report, which I think both parties have signed up to, haven't they? I think Labour and Conservative have put their names to it. So I know the kind of... Go on, sorry.
Yeah, they see it as a vote winner. It's one of those trendy things that people that they think that they can be a little bit closer to the heart of people if they bring something like this in. Actually, there's something that I want to talk about, and it's part of Steve Kavanagh's thing. He says football, of course, unlike any other business, in that clubs do not have customers. They have supporters whose loyalty and emotional connection should never be taken for granted nor exploited. Here at Millwall, that mindset remains at the heart of our decision-making in all areas. And I just want to say, Steve, if you think that, can you please stop getting stewards to treat your fans like shit? They're... but at Millwall...
No, I read the same things that you read, you know.
The stewards have the same mindset as the WAF and SS. I'm not... they do. They've got about as much compassion as the Gestapo in a lot of... Every game, you read something that's gone on with stewards. There was something last week about somebody had sat in the wrong seat and had got turfed out.
Right. The sellout game, I presume. I mean, yeah.
You're okay, they're pretty stupid to sit in the wrong seat. Let's be honest. Yeah, and
I sit in the wrong seat, Neil. I mean, we've all got used to the Den being 3/4 full at best, you know. Sellout games make difficulties because obviously some people turn up wanting to sit in their seat that they've paid for. And it clashes with what you might call, shall we call it Millwall culture? I don't know if that's the right term, but I think people will know what I mean by that, which is sit where you like, largely. Now, I don't know how. Probably the best way to solve that is not to give seat numbers on tickets and let people can sit where they want. And I don't know what the problem is with that. Whether there is a problem, maybe that is a security issue that you can't then be tracked down if you should shout something that you shouldn't shout out, or do something you shouldn't do. I suppose that would be it. But it does create tension, I've got to say, and it's unnecessary tension.
when
I
I
think a
had a
lot of the
season
time.
ticket in the East Upper, there was a group of however many people. There was probably a group of about 150 people up there. And as long as you were sat within 2 or 3 seats, you might just plonk yourself down somewhere and then people would sit around you. And people would
Yeah.
sit in groups, or somebody would turn up, hadn't turned up for a while, and so you started talking to them before the game started, and they would stay where they were, and people would go in and around them. I think you're right in many respects. It's the day trippers that turn up, and my seat, I want to sit in it. Well, I get that, but if there were 3 seats next to that, just sit in them. Yeah,
Well, I think it's a problem because I mean I sit in block one, listeners, and normally on any regular fixture for most of our time in recent years, that's empty, largely empty. You can sit where you like, Neil. No one's, it doesn't matter. Last few games, Sunderland, obviously, and then Sheffield United. I wasn't at the Burnley game. I'd imagine it's probably a bit looser up there for the Burnley game. But the last couple of games I've been to, it's been pretty packed up there, and you're starting to have people sat near you. So it's going to be a thing. If we're going to achieve success, we're going to have to get better at managing full houses because the Den is full with essentially 15,000 Millwall fans in it and whatever the away support bring. So we're going to have to get round this because I do think you're right. I do think it creates unnecessary friction. Stewarding is always a difficult job and they're not highly paid, but I do think it attracts a certain type of, a bit like being a policeman, as we've seen in recent months. It attracts a certain type of person, doesn't it? One that likes to wield their badge and their bit of power. And I do think that is unfortunate because you've come to the wrong place if you think that that's going to impress anyone at the Den. So I don't have an easy solution to it, but I do remember a few years ago the Coldblow Lane end was open seating. I don't think you had
where you
allocated
sat, really,
seats
didn't
there.
you? If you wanted to sit in a block, sat in a block.
Yeah.
But I did read something quite amusing on Hoff about a steward. There was a young black lad who'd obviously become a steward for the day. And we scored and he started to celebrate. He just thought it was great that he was getting all of this free football. Yeah. You got to watch a game of football for nothing. So not all stewards are like.
No, I was just going to make the very same point because some stewards are okay. They don't want to cause ructions, and they're there to have a good day and get paid for it, I suppose, from their point of view. It varies with individual to individual. It doesn't help when you get. I think it's some personalities look to create. Yeah, but anyway, I think we've made our point. I think it's an interesting white paper. We'll see. I mean, both parties, for the vote-winning reasons that you've touched on, seem to be in favour. I think it will come into law. The fact that football establishment don't seem to like the idea of a regulator means, to me, it sounds like it's a good thing. What powers it'll have, don't know. We'll see. And anything that balances out the financial disparity between being a Premier League club and being a Championship and League One, League Two club, anything that brings a bit of balance to the game that makes it. I hate the word sustainable, but it's the only one I've got, listeners. I think is a good thing. So we'll see. Anyway, the extensive update.
Something I want to pick from Steve Kavanagh's. Give a couple of things from Steve Kavanagh's newsletter before you move us on, and that's that we're going to have a 5% increase in ticket prices. Really, people are struggling to keep the electricity and the gas on, and you want us to pay 5% more for football. It's not brilliant, but also something that has happened down here in Plymouth. QR codes for digital entry. We're finally joining 2023, 2024, albeit a little bit late, but long gone are the paper tickets. I don't know how you feel about this, Nick. I'm pretty old school, but I do like digital entry. It means that you don't lose your ticket. It's on your phone. And you go into your digital wallet on your phone, and there it is. It just makes life so much easier.
No, I agree. I mean, and do you know what? I've been thinking this. I've been to, as listeners might know, we do a few non-league games, and I went to, was it Welling United? I went to Welling United. I might have been. Went down, met up with Michael Avery, and had a few beers down at Welling. Got the bus over there. But I was really struck, Neil, by the fact that you could pay online beforehand, and they sent you a barcode at Welling United, National League South level, and they buzzed me a barcode, and I stood at the turnstile, and the girl there scanned it, and in I went. I thought, this is dead easy. This is this is so easy. It made me think, well, why can't Millwall be doing this? Why are we still?
I think there is cost behind it. I think it costs a lot of money.
There is, yeah.
At our level, and let's be honest, Millwall and technology, they don't go hand in hand, do they? So I would implore the club to have at least 3 home pre-season friendlies next year.
I'm gonna borrow Harry's joke, and if you're listening, H, I'm gonna nick it entirely off of you. He made a good crack about if we do get promoted to the Premier League, opening day fixture with digital barcode tickets versus Manchester City, with the queues going down Zampa Road into Ilderton Road, curving down into Bermondsey.
Yeah, but we might kick off by the 4th game of the season.
The territorial support group trying to keep people at bay. No, I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's used so widely now that you have on your smartphone. Presuming you've got a smartphone, not everyone does out there, but anyway, presuming you've got a smartphone, you get a barcode on that, and you just show that and scan it, and then you go, and it is easy, and it's done quite widely now. The only thing I would say is you've got to think about some of our older fans and some of our younger fans, actually, who are not internet savvy, Neil. I mean, the likes of you and I, we're both of a certain age, but we move in this kind of world reasonably naturally, I think, whereas not everyone does. I think you have to be a little bit conscious that...
Yeah, but there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance.
There has to be, yeah.
But I think that
because otherwise you exclude people,
then they ought to have the physical ticket, to be honest. It's fair play. Yeah, not everybody has got a smartphone. People open up on the day and think, I wouldn't mind going to watch Millwall this afternoon. Maybe they're not Millwall fans, so they might not have the app. I think Millwall needs to be open-minded. They can't say, right, everything is now digital, because it just ain't going to work. So I think they need to use a little common sense. But for those people that want digital tickets, I think it's a fantastic idea. And
I think it's well done for the club for moving to it. I mean, just going back to my Welling United trip, I've done other grounds too, where at that non-league level that they've got the same idea. You can pretty much up to a certain point on the day buy a ticket, it'll buzz straight back at you. There's your barcode, and you're walking in. You're getting down that kind of pay on the day style approach. and maybe it's not always possible, but I think it's much better. So no, fair play. I saw that and I like that story. The other thing I wanted to pick up on, obviously, the new training ground. There's a couple of bits in there. Jimmy's Day, we mentioned that last week. It's always a wonderful day. The memorial stones issue seems to be coming to some form of conclusion. How that's going to pan out in the end, I don't know. But I think the club have finally given up on trying to get the company they were using to fit these stones. They may have to go to an alternative contractor. We'll more on that story when it comes out, but that's still unfolding. The other thing is the new training ground seems to be going full steam ahead now, Neil. That's they've signed a Section 106 agreement, which is a legal agreement that sets in stone the club's long-term commitment to fulfilling their undertakings around Sevenoaks. I think that's going to be a big step forward. If we can get into the Premier League, we're going to need the facilities that come with that, and I think that's a big step forwards for the club long term.
Definitely, it's something that we've been in favour of ever since it was announced. It's something the club desperately need. We need to get away from Claremont Road.
We do.
And yeah, but it's in Hoodoo and its injury record, and it's just moving the club in the right direction, as QR codes are, as the match day village or whatever they call it is doing.
Fan zone, yeah,
the fan zones, the entertainment. It's all moving Millwall out of being Millwall, really, isn't it? And into the 21st century or whatever century we're in now.
If we do get promoted, listeners, we're going to have to gear up. I mean, it's a different level in the Premier League. Everyone knows it listening to this show. Some of it might be a bit of a wrench to leave the past behind, but I think some parts of the past can stay. Probably best left there. I mean, just there's a thing here about the club saying thank you for the attendances. I mean, the atmospheres. I wasn't at the Burnley game; I was only watching on TV, but the atmosphere came over well. It's really interesting to see. Maybe it's dawned on Gary Rowett the value of the Den when it's in full cry. How other clubs don't like it, and how it spurs on our players to more effort than maybe they would otherwise achieve. And I think that's it's just interesting to see that maybe the club can see now that the Den being the weapon that it really is. There's a paragraph here that I've missed out on my read through here. So that was, I think, as I say, is extensive as an update. A final piece about John Motson passing away. BBC Match of the Day, long-term commentator.
Yeah, I found normally when somebody dies, I don't really think about it, but John Motson was something different yesterday. To wake up to the news that John Motson had died, it's just a big part of my childhood growing up, and those halcyon days when the only thing you had to worry about was football and playing.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. Yeah,
and every time you heard a commentary, he wasn't my favourite commentator. Brian Moore was my favourite commentator. I love watching the Big Match on YouTube.
Yeah.
The old Big Match.
Yeah.
Brian Moore, I was reading his autobiography the other week. He just, but Motson was just so iconic, wasn't he? And I think the Sun.
I think it's
the Sun did a brilliant front page this morning with a sheepskin coat and goat underneath it.
Yeah, which is iconic, and the flat cap and the sheepskin. I think the era of the big commentators as part of them. I suppose there are so many games shown now, Neil, that modern day commentary doesn't seem quite as doesn't carry quite the weight that it used.
Trying to impart their views upon you. Whereas the like Motson, Brian Moore,
David Coleman was another one, wasn't he? And Barry Davis, Brian Moore, you've said. But even on ITV, I mean, I'm thinking like Hugh Johns and oh god, there's a few.
John,
they were just like major major names.
Yeah, well, on radio you had Brian Butler and Peter Jones. They commentated, they set a scene for you, and they didn't impart their views and their interpretation as to what was going on. They commentated on what was going on and left it at that. It's just, but for him to die, if him to die yesterday, it was just a great shock, and you forget that he was 77. And what is actually fun is that he actually grew up in Lewisham, which I did.
Did he? I didn't know that.
And his father was a preacher, a clergyman.
Right. I didn't know that.
I think he used to walk to the Den, I read somewhere, but just one of the all-time great commentators of English football.
I didn't know that. Yeah, no, well, rest in peace, John Motson. As you say, one of the iconic voices of football of my youth, your youth, and plenty of other people's youth. And these people are passing, and I suppose it brings your own life into perspective when you hear these bits of news. Neil, we've reached the end of our agenda. Looking forward to some big fixtures ahead. Stoke tomorrow, Luton away midweek, and then Norwich back at the Den next Saturday. We say it every week now, mate, don't we? It's another big week ahead.
Yeah, and the big question is, do you drop Charlie Cresswell tomorrow if Sean Hutchinson is fit? No, to be Gary Rowett with that decision. I think it's pretty harsh myself. I don't know what you think, and Hutchinson is.
I don't think he'll. Yeah, I can't see him dropping him, but I think that he'll be on the bench at least for tomorrow.
We can't.
It'd be harsh to drop him, wouldn't it?
Again, can we? We can't afford for Sean Hutchinson to come in and break down. So
no. I think he'll be on the bench at the most tomorrow if he's fit enough to go. And it would be hard on Cresswell. I think it's done very, very well for us. Been a few players have done very well lately, but I think Cresswell has been one of the rocks of a defence that has, as we've said already at the start of the show, got 4 points from the best two sides in the league this week. So I hope he starts up there at Bet 365.
The next week, in points terms, we've got 9 available. We've got 3.
9 available.
Yeah, we've got 2. Yeah, no, that's not making any bones about it, actually, thinking about it. We've got 3 very tough games in different ways. Stoke away is going to be difficult. Norwich at home is always a difficult game.
Yeah.
And then we've got to go to that toilet that is Luton in between.
I think avoid defeat is number one. We need at least 1 win, 2 wins preferably out of those 3, and maybe a point from one of the others. I don't know. Big week, as we keep saying.
I think 5 points.
Neil was
going for 5 points. And then the Rowett Express will continue to
rolls on
to thunder towards the Premier League and everything that will entail. The likes of Pep Guardiola thinks that those Muppets down at Palace generate a tremendous atmosphere. Pet my son, you
wait till he gets to the Den.
Yeah.
One dream at a time, Neil. Huge thank you to Neil for coming on the show on his Friday morning. Thank you for your time, mate. Always appreciated.
Yeah, no, fantastic, mate. It's always great to actually talk absolute nonsense for the best part of
an hour. Yeah. This is one of the patterns of the show, listeners. I get to about 10 minutes in, I thought I've got nothing else I can talk about, and then somehow we find a subject, and that's what's happened today. So huge thank you to you two for listening. From Neil and myself, it's Arrivederci Mill. We'll be back on after the Stoke game. Until then, it's bye for now.
Achtung, Millwall.